All right, how are we looking? All right, welcome back everybody. I just wanted to give you some insight today onto 5 pieces of gear that are a must-have if you are looking to get into real estate, videography, and photography. Quick background on me, I did start about 6 years ago, a little over 6 years ago now, and I started on a Canon SL3, which was a pretty limited camera for what this industry requires. So I'm hoping that these tips get you a little bit ahead faster than I did when I started in this industry. All right, so number 1 is obviously a camera. So the specs that I'd be looking for when buying my first camera for real estate, photography, or videography would be a full frame. You're gonna want something that shoots 4K 60 frames per second. For video specifically, you're gonna need something that is able to slow down that footage. Just watch out for whatever camera you get that the 60 frames doesn't add a additional crop into the video. And then for photos, you don't need something that is super high megapixel. So something that's lower megapixel is totally fine. So this should actually help you with the initial cost of your first camera. So I am a Canon user, so what I will suggest is Canon related, but if you are looking at Sony or Nikon, hopefully these specs give you a starting point to look for those types of cameras. So as far as Canon goes, I would suggest something like a Canon R8. It is a full frame, is about 24 megapixels, which is more than enough for real estate. And then as far as video quality goes, you can shoot in C-Log 3, I believe. That should be more than enough to get you started in real estate, photography, and video. And that is running about $1450. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the starting price point for that type of camera. Now moving on to number 2, which is lens. Obviously you need a lens to go with your camera. So starting in real estate, you will probably not be shooting massive homes. So in order to shoot these smaller, tighter space homes, you definitely need a wider lens. So something 14 millimeter, 15 millimeter, 16 millimeter, and ideally something with a lower aperture. So when you're on the video side, you have a little bit more room to play with when it comes to the low light scenarios, which in these smaller, maybe cheaper homes usually don't have as great of light as some of the bigger homes. So as far as lens goes, again, Canon related, but I would go with a 16 millimeter prime lens that they have, which goes down to a 2.8 aperture. I think this will allow you to shoot anything that you need to, especially in these smaller homes. And as of recording right now, it is going for about $259. If you had some more money to spend, I would suggest getting something like the RF 14 to 35 or the 15 to 35. Those are obviously more expensive, but they are great options because you can zoom in if you need to, whereas that 16 millimeter, you are stuck at that focal length. All right, number 3 is something that I think gets overlooked a little bit, which is an SD card. And if you are shooting 4K 60 for the video in log profile, I do recommend that you get a faster reading SD card. Something like the SanDisk 64 gigabyte SD card that writes at about 300 megabits per second. That is going for sale right now for about $144. It is expensive, but I have run into issues before with a slower writing card that just can't keep up with the demand of 4K writing speed. Number 4 is gonna be pretty simple. You definitely need a tripod when it comes to real estate photography. You need to have your photos leveled horizontally and vertically, so it's definitely a must-have. Now, I don't think I need anything fancy for this, so I have a Neewer tripod for about $55, so that'll do everything that you need to for real estate photography. All right, so the 5th and final piece of gear for video is a gimbal. You'll need a gimbal to be walking through the home and keep the video steady. With the Canon R8 plus the 16 millimeter lens, it's a pretty small setup, so you could definitely get away with something like a DJI RS3 Mini, which is about $200. But if you can get something a little bit bigger to future-proof yourself if you do end up upgrading cameras and everything, like a RS4, but for the time being, an RS3 Mini should do you fine. Now for a bonus piece of content, I didn't include this in the must-haves because I think you can shoot real estate and everything that you need to just on a camera and a lens. However, I do think having a drone is a big plus when it comes to real estate. A ton of realtors are going to be asking for drone photos or drone video, especially if you live in a very scenic environment. So in that case, a good starter drone would be something like a DJI Mini 3 or any of the minis starting at Mini 3 moving up to 4 or 5. But currently you can buy the Fly More combo kit with the 3 extra batteries and extra propellers and stuff like that for about $659. Again, it's not a must-have. I started my career without a drone, but quickly got into it. You do have to take your Part 107 if you do plan to fly commercially, basically meaning you want to make money doing it. So definitely look into getting your Part 107 if you live in the United States here. All right, well, that's all my beginner gear tips to get into real estate photography and videography. If I missed anything or you guys have any questions, leave a comment below. Please subscribe, I'd really appreciate that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.